more than the official reason advanced for the cancellation. You have a story on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. Quit or forced out. State agency boss at center of edible oil scandal leaves. Hounded, it says in the sub-headline there. In January 2021, Pamela Mutua was appointed managing director of Kenya National Trading Corporation, a once dormant state agency whose fortunes changed with the new government that handed it 24 billion shillings kitty, 16.5 billion shillings edible oils deal imploded into a scam that has ensnared top officials. You have a story on page 7 of the Daily Nation this morning. And also on the sidebar, asthma patients worried as inhalers run out of stock. Pharmacists say Ventolin inhalers have been out of stock since last October. Patients are now forced to buy costly alternatives, and workers ask state to abandon IMF. Central Organization of Trade Unions accuses the International Monetary Fund of pushing policies that are hurting Kenyans and weakening the shilling. Also transition. Billionaire banker goes down fighting more injustices. Mugo Mungai stripped to Uganda shortly after Yoweri Museveni took over power, marked the start of his troubles. You have a story on page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning. Civil servants risk pay freeze, I should say, over wealth forms. Public Service Commission warns over 10,000 employees hired by the government agencies last year will not be paid their salaries until they comply with the statutory requirement to file wealth declaration reports. The lifestyle audits have become critical following cases of employees amassing unexplained wealth, and this is on the back page of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, workers ask state to abandon IMF. Central Organization of Trade Unions accuses the International Monetary Fund of pushing policies that are hurting Kenyans and weakening the shilling. You have a story on page 8 of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, 48,000 grade E scorers to join TVETs. 48,000 grade E scorers to join TVET. State wants the group to undertake craft courses relevant to the labor market. And this story is on page 2 of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, you have the property pull-out magazine that comes in handy for you every Thursday. And it's all about the construction industry. The construction industry is going green. Are you in or out? That's the probing question there. You can read all about it inside the property magazine in the Daily Nation this morning. Also, leaking airport. 8 billion shillings sunk in shoddy jobs. Leaking airport, 8 billion shillings sunk in shoddy jobs. Kenya Airports Authority also put on the spot for paying billions of contractors for stalled projects in 4 airports. You have a story on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. And zebra fowl all alone. After mom dies of birth complications, it's fall all alone. I think there's a typo there. And you can see it says heartbreaking. We can see Margaret Lekirisai, a gravy zebra, trust scout from the northern part of the extensive Nkaroni Plains in Samburu, with a fall beside the carcass of its mother. The young fall, yeah, it's a fall, circles the dead mother. KWS Wamba team personnel take the fall to a rescue center, and you can follow the story inside the Star this morning. Raila roots for panel to investigate judiciary graft. Raila roots for panel to investigate judiciary graft. That is what we have on the front page of the Star this morning. On the side, when Chai wealth exposes mother and daughter rift. Chai wealth exposes mother and daughter rift. That is what also we do have on the front page of the Star this morning. Let's see what the People Daily is holding for us. The agony of pensioners. The agony of pensioners. Injustice, corruption, red tape, fraudsters, and inefficiencies by officials pushing aging and ailing retirees to penury and early graves. We shall be looking at that as well on page 4 of the People Daily, where it is tucked away. And fraudsters, conned retired staff, hard-earned savings. Also, officials demand documents from kin of dead beneficiaries which they can't obtain. Senior officials blame delay on lack of key documents from former employers. Sick beneficiaries unable to make trips to city to process cash. And you can read the rest of this story there inside the People Daily this morning. Giants Tunisia and Algeria exit AFCON. That is on the sports pages of the People Daily. Lobby vows to raise the red flag on lenders robbing border riders. That is on page 7 of the People Daily as well. Why insurer is not paying hospitals? Why insurer is not paying hospitals? You can read all about it also inside the People Daily on page 2 this morning. Waliopata A kuenda chuoni. Waliopata A kuenda chuoni. That is, of course, E. Wanafunzi 48 walio kwangura alamu hiyo kulazimishwa kujiunga na vyuo vya ufundi. That is the story that you want to follow. Now that is the fate of the 48,000, the E graders. Wanafunzi wengi waliopata alama ya chini zaidi katika mtihani wa kitaifa wa KCSE huwa wanasaulika, wasijulikane wanafanya nini. You can follow the story on page 2 of Taifa Leo with you with the latest development there. People are wondering, what do we do with these large constituents, the large constituent of the E graders. Also, mkutano Azimio sasa waingia baridi. Chelsea yanusa taji la EFL Cup. That is a story to want to follow inside the Taifa Leo this morning. The Business Daily. Debt chief exit Treasury after Eurobond fallout. Debt chief exit Treasury after Eurobond fallout. That is a story to want to follow. Sirima says his exit will give room for young blood. Pressure groups have been pushing for his retirement. Let's just read a bit of it, what it says. The Kenya Kwanza government is parting ways with the Director General in charge of debt management at the Treasury, Haron Sirima, amid escalating debt sustainability concerns that have forced the Exchequer to retreat on a plan to buy back $300 million of the $2 billion Eurobond that matures in June this year. The former Central Bank of Kenya Deputy Governor, who has been at the helm of the debt management unit since 2018, confirmed his exit without divulging details surrounding his departure. He says, quote unquote, my tour of public duty has come to an end. I need to give way to young blood. I have a couple of months to go awaiting recruitment of new Director General. That story is tucked on page 2 of the Business Daily this morning. And Dr. Haron Sirima's bio also is here. The role, DG Public Debt Management Office from June 2018. Previous role, CBK Deputy Governor, Vice Chairman, Monetary Policy Committee. And on his academy, he holds a Bachelor of Arts Economics. Also, we have a Bachelor of Philosophy in Economics, right? Masters of Economics as well, and PhD on Entrepreneurship, right? Maybe I should just consult the academia to tell me this particular course is here. PE field, yeah, is a Bachelor of what? B. British qualification. Is a what? British qualification. British qualification. Bachelor of Philosophy in Economics. Combine some philosophy and economics. And economics, yeah, that's what I was wondering. I've never seen it here. So, a Bachelor of Philosophy in Economics, and also Masters in Economics, PhD on Entrepreneurship, appointment 1998 as a graduate trainee, right? Is there any rhyme or reason why you think he's actually just resigning before time? Kipron Kitone, good morning, good to see you.
Good morning, Debala.
Yes.
Nice to see you and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Yes, a lot that we're looking forward to, of course, discussing with you, looking at the state of affairs right now, with what we're waking up also on the front page of a Standard. I didn't show you. I have the hard copy, if maybe my cameraman will just assist me there. What shillings free fall means, this is what is on the front page of the Standard this morning. And it says, the steep decline in the value of the shilling is causing negative ripples throughout the country's economy. Consumer goods prices are skyrocketing, public debt is rising, government interventions are yet to bear fruit, and as the local currency shoots for 170 against the US dollar. Kenyans are asking, where will it stop? Where will it stop? That's a probing question. 160.1875, what the shilling was exchanging against the dollar yesterday, according to officials' CBK data, however. That is according to official CBK data. However, some traders were exchanging it for nearly 170 to the dollar. And also still on the front page of a Standard, why Senator Keroshe wants Kihika removed. That is another story you want to follow inside page 8. Also, inside mind of an online predator, like true indomitable lions, Cameroon survive. That is also what we have here on the front page of the Standard this morning. Probing question is, what shillings free fall means? What does it really mean where we are at right now? That is what is on the front page of the Standard this morning. All right, let's just begin from that particular headline, especially how the shilling is on a free fall, and also the Red Sea and the warning functions that is going on, how is adversely also affecting the supply chain. Kiprono Kitone, maybe we can just give an introductory remark generally on the current state of affairs of everything before we navel gaze on salient issues that we have.
Okay, thank you very much, Debal. And once again, it's the beginning of the year. We have new hopes, new opportunities. We have a fresh start. We're able to push the start button on many things that are happening in the economy. But again, Debal, I want to say that the challenges that are facing our economy are not unique to Kenya.
Yeah.
We have traveled extensively, and the challenges we are facing in Kenya are very common to what's happening across the frontier economies, and we are part of the frontier economies. The resurgent dollar, the high interest rate regime in the strong Western economies has seen a flight of dollars from across the world back to the United States of America as investors seek interest in cash in short-term securities in the U.S. markets. We've seen between 2022 and 2024, the Fed increased its interest rates 11 times. And on a more positive note, I think that we are at the end now of that high interest rate regime, particularly in the United States of America, which has a huge impact on global economies. And it has wreaked havoc, of course, on the value of soft currencies like the Kenya shilling. On a more positive note, I think there's two things that have happened. I mean, Kenya has been able to secure a very good facility of $941 million from the IMF, of which there will be an immediate drawdown of $620 million. At the same time, there's also been a surge in exports. You see, the one man's meat is another man's poison. The very rapidly declining Kenya shilling is a big benefit to our exporters because they're able to realize more shillings for the value of their exports. However, on the converse, it is very harmful for the consumer price index because, purchase of any commodities from foreign jurisdictions in the US dollar become more and more expensive, and that has a direct inflationary effect on consumers. So it's a double-edged sword, and I am hopeful that this new financing that the government has been able to secure will stabilize the shilling. And I think the Business Daily here affirms that over the last few days we've seen some, reverse reaction of the shilling. It had risen to 162, but has come down yesterday to about 160 shillings.
Right, but also we have some good relief from the diasporans as well on their quest and journey to hit the 1 trillion shilling mark. So far, they actually crossed over just a little bit halfway to that particular trajectory. And Dr. Shemo Chodo, you can tell us about this latest development as well.
Morning, Dibal. Yes, in a way, it's good news that the remittances, our target is we're racing towards 1 trillion shilling remittance by the year 2030. From the look of things, yes, we're likely to get there even before 2030. But I think a major reason for this is not so much because of the increase in the remittances. I think the increase is just about 4-5%, which itself is still good during a time when the global economic meltdown is still with us. But that notwithstanding, it would have been nice if we maintained the 10% annual growth in remittances in hard currency terms. So I fully associate with the points that Chairman Kiprona has shared. I think 2024 looks like it's going to be a better year for Kenya. But I think while he celebrates us having gotten this $1 billion from Bretton Woods, I think like a number of other panelists last week, we thought that we have borrowed enough. We should be borrowing more. If it was a grant, I would celebrate it.
Right, I'll just leave it at that so that I can actually also sort out your mic a bit. I've lost you, so it will be good to hear you continuing with that. But just hold on and don't lose your track of thought. Let me just rope in. Bunyasi Sakwa, good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
Yes.
We haven't seen each other for a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while since we saw you. The last time I saw also you are really not feeling very well with the flu.
Yeah, getting out of it.
Fantastic. All right, let's just talk about so far the headline on the Business Daily, just briefly, because I know also you know the intrigues about the debt management. You had a bill in Parliament, in the previous Parliament, regarding the debt management, the public debt ceiling. Now we have also Haron Sirima, who is exiting, according to what we have as a splash there. Do you, from your own assessment, think he's been able to do a sterling job? Is there any frustration that he is experiencing, especially with this particular docket? What will be your comment briefly?
Thank you very much, Debal. I guess Mr. Sirima has been around for a while. I don't know if he's retiring or the other people make different choices in life. But I think the debt department, I have not interacted with it in the last year and a half, slightly more perhaps. But the last interactions I had with them, I didn't have a good story to tell at that time. I know they were struggling with things that are accumulated over the years, including bad record keeping. That is also, that basic bookkeeping doesn't seem like a big thing in a big agency, but this was a real problem. Mm-hmm. To the extent where critics at that time would say credibly that you can't quite tell how much we owe and so on. I hope that gets cleaned up in this day and age of digitalization. But more than that, I think the things that were underlying our bad debt aren't always borrowing. It is sometimes inadequate tightening on the expenditure side. I think we had in the rebound when Kibaki came in, people thought, now it's time we can expand the economy, we can spend where we want to, and so on. And it didn't go very well. It's still a problem. Although the problems with the dollar, international problems with the dollar, have masked local problems, we still have to remember that even if there is a revival of the global economy, and even if the dollar resurgence receded somewhat, we would still have to deal with our local problems. And our local problems are going to be how much we spend and where we spend it, and obviously how we raise it. The Bretton Woods have come to our aid, but it's not always for free, as you know. The conditionalities tighten over time, but I'm glad that they have come to our aid because we need that. Now we really must go into a tight questioning of where we're going to rationalize expenditure.
All right, excellent, Iraqi. Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Very well.
Good morning. For more one goes, looks like a very good morning. But not on a debt scenario. But before we go to debt, we tend to be very much absorbed by economic issues and other political issues. Sometimes we forget to enjoy the small things of life. I don't know how many of you this morning, about 30 minutes ago, were able to admire the setting moon. Very beautiful scenery. I don't know how many of you have ever witnessed a setting moon. We only see the setting sun or the rising moon, but not the setting sun. But that apart, I think two issues you have raised are, one, the issue of the debt chief exiting the Treasury. And I think I like his argument. He wants to give way to new blood. But we must admit that debt is a very hot potato in this country. It doesn't matter who you are. So probably managing debt for this country with all these issues about Eurobond, with all the local debts that have not been paid. My colleague should have mentioned that When we mention debt in this country, we always forget there's a lot of local debt. A lot of contractors, a lot of suppliers are not paid. And when the new government came in, they even came up with a commission to find out, not a commission, but a committee to verify local debts. And I think when we are giving our debt statistics, we must always include the local debts, because they are issued as important than the foreign debt. And I think the other issue about the sharing becoming weak, I am as perplexed as an economist, because we have done all that we could. We raised the interest rates. Taxes have gone up. So using all the economic fundamentals, the sharing should be becoming stronger. But I've seen the headline in the business data that in a rare upturn, the sharing is becoming stronger. And I'm hoping those bold policies like raising the interest rates are now working. And soon we are going to have a strong sharing.
All right, the bit of it that we wanted also to focus on is the fact that we have KOTU, which has come out very vehemently to condemn some of its policies from IMF. And just before we run that particular story, of course, we'll want to look at their statements. They are raising key issues and the challenges affecting workers, especially in Kenya. And they're saying the cost of living, as measured by the Consumer Price Index, which you mentioned, Kiprono, has been on the increase over the past year, thereby introducing the bracket of items workers can purchase with their income. And the Consumer Price Index has increased from 126.73 in September 2022 to 135.32 in September 2023, representing a 6.7% increase, citing some of examples on electricity and fuel. The average retail price of electricity increased by 44.1% from October 2022 to October 2023. And even the cost of power as it stands right now, since January the 1st, has increased by 5 shillings. They're raising also the depreciation of the shilling, which we are talking about right now, and the high interest rates being the cost of capital affects investments either positively or negatively. Interest rates in Kenya, especially the central bank rate, which is the benchmark of credit for commercial bank, has been on the increase, making loans very expensive. And even now, we will talk about much later about the fringe benefits, especially for the corporates. That also has increased as well. What will be your comment?
Deborah, let me start. By first of all, let me just touch briefly on the exit of Mr. Sirima as a national debt lead in the government of Kenya. I think there's two aspects to it. One is that it's very laudable when a public officer, seeing that he is unable to discharge his duties, and inspire the confidence of the stakeholders and those he is expected to serve, realizing that he cannot, chooses to exit. It is a good global best practice to resign, step aside, and in other jurisdictions, they actually call it falling on your own sword. And I think for me, Sirima also gives a reason that she would like to pave way to young blood. And, that in itself is a realization that there could be other people in the economy who could be able to do a better job than he has. And so I think if we look at it from a purely governance point of view, it is a culture that we need to inculcate in our public servants. That if you do not feel like you can execute your duty to the best of your ability, or if something catastrophic happens within the ambit of your responsibility, the right thing to do is to step aside. Historically, we've seen many public servants in Kenya have huge disasters under their watch and stay in office and say, I will not resign. So I laud Mr. Sirima for his decision.
But a few days, it was just a few days shy to his retirement.
That is fine.
Why would it be coming very early in the day?
If he has had a fundamental, disagreement with his superiors about how they must execute his function, then the right thing for him is to step aside. I don't think he needs to sit through a situation where he is not aligned philosophically in terms of the direction where debt management is going. I believe that could be one of the reasons. I'm not privy to anything further, but it is the correct thing to do in my opinion.
Do you think everything is okie-dory as far as Treasury is concerned? Because we've had questions and it has been in the public domain, murmurs that even Treasury CS himself was thinking about throwing in, the towel as far as running the affairs is concerned.
There have been that rumor about the cabinet secretary Treasury, but I don't think it has been confirmed. But Fitch recently downgraded Kenya's credit rating from A to B. And the reason is, of course, the potential or the possibility that Kenya may default on its Eurobond payment. We've also seen a pronouncement from the highest office in the land that Kenya was going to make an advance payment of the Eurobond by the end of last year, which did not happen. So obviously there are concerns about whether or not we'll be able to redeem our debt, and particularly the Eurobond. And even the economists cited the Eurobond payment as Kenya's biggest short-term potential challenge economically. And we would not like to see our country go the direction of Ghana, where there was a default, and the default led to many knock-on effects to the economy, including a haircut on all bonds. And that would be a great disaster if it happened in this country. So it raises, of course it does, the exit at such a crucial moment raises a lot of concern about our own debt management. And I would still like to believe that with the assurances of our leadership that we will be able to redeem the Eurobond, because that is the short-term biggest problem that we have ahead of us. Now, on to Kotu's statement, Debal. I would like to say, first of all, Mr. Atoli and his Kotu brigade have done a great job in always flagging national issues.
Yes.
But the problem I have with them is that, yes, they have described the problem, and many people can describe the problem, but have they provided a solution? I would like to read into more detail their statement, and I hope that they have provided a solution. And, let me touch on something that concerns me, and I have raised it before, and I want to raise it again. One of the challenges that we are seeing with the current administration is, a lot of shift in policy position about important matters affecting the economy of this country. We've seen a lot of disruption under the pretext of reforms. We've seen it in many sectors of the economy. And, the Constitution of 2010 provides for public participation. And I can say with no fear of contradiction, that has been happening only on a token basis. We've seen a number of industries disrupted. People lose jobs in their thousands simply because a politician heading a ministry will decide that there are some cartels in some industry. He has to start a reform activity. But many a time, those reforms are actually hiding mischievous activity and rent-seeking by these same personalities. Yes.
Right, thank you. Dr. Shemo Chodho.
Yes, Debal, my major one would be an appeal to the diasporas that this is probably the best time to bring in the hard-earned dollars and euros and sterling pounds and yens into the economy. Because what you get for it, if the shilling rebounds, say, from next month, you will have lost the opportunity to make the most of the current unfortunate situation. But Debal, having said that, I'm among those who don't believe in a complete, absolute free market economy, that we just allow the shilling to get its own level. I've said here before that everything has to be moderated. In my view, I think Treasury needs to intervene at this stage so that the shilling doesn't depreciate any further than it has. Some estimate it may go down up to 200 or even 300 or worse. I don't think that could be something to celebrate. I've been in economies where, as people queue to buy bread, the price doubles while you're still on the queue. I don't think we want Kenya to get... you don't want Kenya to get to that state, Debal, seriously. Our shilling has been a treasured currency. We need to find out a way to keep it at where it is. But above all else, Debal, and I think it's been discussed on this platform before, I still don't understand why when we buy from Uganda, one of our leading trading partners, we have to pay in hard currencies. I think we need to quickly accelerate what our heads of state passed, I think about 80 years ago, the East African Monetary Union, so that we are able to trade with our economies as we aspire to ultimately towards maybe an Afro currency, so that Africa is able to trade. Because that has got to happen. It may take 100 years or 50 years, but it has to happen. Lastly, Debal, in terms of Brother Tuoli, in terms of solidarity messages from the trade unionists, while I agree with him that Kenyans are suffering, the cost of living is pretty high, particularly to the majority of ordinary Kenyans who spent a good part of the holidays in the village. People are really suffering. Many who are reasonably off may not feel it as much, particularly the political leadership may not feel it as much. But the situation is not good. I don't think we want it to deteriorate any further. But having said that, I really don't think that moving or pulling out of the Bretton Woods is the solution. I think we just need to negotiate better on our terms, and also we go a little easy on borrowing and tighten expenditure side. I don't think we can sufficiently emphasize enough that please contain our expenditure. I think that has been talked about, but there's been a lot of lip service to it. And there are many instances, one can enumerate, both at county levels as well as national, where there's a lot of wastage.
All right, so do you think we should be raising accusatory fingers to IMF? Because this is what Francis Atwole seems to be saying. Some of these policies are hurting Kenyans. Is IMF the person to actually be raising accusatory fingers to, or we can actually just be pointing to ourselves? We've chosen this.
Yes, first of all, I'm glad that KOTU has suddenly been re-established in Kenya. I think it's been missing from action for years and years. When there were very obvious, credible things that were happening on which the views of the trade union movement would have helped. They help shape policy. They help define boundaries. Politicians will also say, oh, well, we can't push it beyond this point without agreeing with the trade union movement. But they are completely silent on this. I really think that if we instituted better democracy in all of our institutions, we would get turnovers that bring in people. KOTU need not be opposed to government. The only ones who can represent the interests of workers and say, hey, the CPI is getting out of hand, what are you guys doing? If you do that, this is how we might respond and so on. And the government defines its boundaries. I think that for almost 10 years, I think it's been sort of really dead. I'm glad that they are now coming up. And there are very many issues that are happening in the economy in which their views would have been important. On the Eurobond and Dr. Sirma, the Eurobond was a very controversial thing right from the beginning. We needed the money at the time, but its handling and its processing is still a matter that is subject to inquiry. People like the Director General were really not making executive decisions. These were just senior officers helping along in the decisions that were made. So I don't think he can carry too much real personal responsibility, but I think that maybe it was just the right time for him to exit as these problems rise to even higher levels of crisis. They were not very keen on getting any kind of management, rather improvements in the management of the debt chain, the value chain of debt, if you can put it that way. They weren't at all. Well-trained people like Sirma did not really help government by expressing contrary view, even quietly, and to say maybe we should do things differently and so on. The resistance was just immense. I know that from the attempts to get my bill published and so on, which we did finally, but with a lot of compromises and so on. I just hope that Kenyans realize that nobody has monopoly on the management of public affairs, particularly affairs over which you don't have full control, operating in the global economy, the regional negotiations and things that you have to do. And that if they have good views, even if they're contrary to the mainstream thinking, they should voice them. And I was personally disappointed that over the years, over the last year and a half, we had very little from the central bank leadership, and we also had very little from the Treasury. They were rather silent. They kept what they knew to themselves, so they didn't help in the public discourse of issues around the deteriorating economy or the challenges in the economy. They said nothing good, nothing bad, and just kept quiet. I think that's not something that should be encouraged. I think it's good if we all participate and put our views on the table. Even the senior managers of the economy also benefit from these views. Give them perspectives, as I said earlier, of boundaries of policy, how you should not get out of line. They'll tell you that you aren't doing enough, or you're doing too much, and so on. This is important. They know. That's why we invest in education, and so on. We can't invest in education to such high levels and have people simply sit and get quiet. I found that disconcerting, actually, I must say. When the new governor came in, Kamau Thuge, he kind of began to speak a little bit, kind of. But he can do more. They are all capable. The previous one, this one, are all capable people. Lastly, I just want to say that the world is headed up. There's a bit of upbeatness that the recession may be, in fact, easing off. Partly because we hope the US will now make decisions that are more globally friendly, because they're also going to be facing elections. And for that reason, they'll ease of their hardline positions. America comes first, and I think if the guy who was president previously should appear to be winning, we'll bounce right back where we have been. It won't be an easier on it. So let me leave it there.
Right. But the docket of debt management in this country, the way it's been handled, since we took the Eurobond, transparency has been such a lonely word from that particular docket.
Yes,
it's been a shifted, and even right now, from the control of budget, they cannot pinpoint to exact figure of what the country's debt is. We have different figures from the Treasury or from control of budgets. We do not have a definitive figure. Even as he exits, and we do not know what we are actually paying for, or we owe other institutions as far as this debt management is concerned. Do you think the person who's coming in will be able to move this needle jot to where transparency is?
That's a question, because if any of you has a position of a debt corrector or in a title that has a debt in it, it's not a very exciting job to go looking for money and to go managing debt. So from any point of view, it's not a very enviable position. It's a very hard position, looking at where the country is. On one side, we are saying we are collecting more taxes, and we would have expected by that to get less debt by extension. But you're still getting debt, we are still paying taxes. So I think whoever comes to that position, it doesn't need to be civil, but whoever comes will still be sitting on a hot seat. Because you have to manage the government debt, you have to manage the local debt, and you have to manage the expectations of those we have lent money to. I was surprised my friend Kitonde saying that the government never paid Eurobond in December. I thought they did, because it was promised in public. So the big question you should be asking is whether there will be more transparency from the debt office, because that's what people have been asking. It is very disconcerting when I hear Dibao saying that we don't know how much debt this country is owed or owes. That should be public information. We should be able to tell how much counties are owed, how much Eurobond is, how much China is owed. It should be public information.
Indeed.
And one way to manage debt is actually to make it public, so that we know how much money we are supposed to pay, at what rate, and so on. So I think whoever takes over must give us more information about debt. On the second issue about IMF, I'm surprised that court is complaining about IMF, because court traditionally for the last few years has become very close to the government, which is very common in a lot of African countries. But we are the people who invited IMF. Again, I raised the disconcerting issue. We are raising more taxes, so by extension, IMF should be becoming less relevant. And that's what Kenya Kwanza government told us, that we want to benchmark with the Kibaki. So when Kibaki came to power, more taxes were corrected, and we never used to hear about IMF. So one way to keep IMF off and maybe have our own policies working without IMF input is to more prudently manage our money, our revenues. That includes debts, the taxes, and all the other money that we have, and maybe live within our means. If we did that, IMF would disappear from our headlines as they did during Kibaki era. But as long as we are not doing the right thing now, I see IMF hanging around for some time to come. And I can assure you that Atori and others will keep complaining.
Yeah, let me just touch on two things, X, and maybe just, for your benefit. One is, I do agree that it is probably near impossible to determine the actual full amount of money that is owed by Kenya. I recently had a cup of tea with a Western European contractor who has deployed one of the major infrastructure projects in Kenya. And he says that the Kenya government started to default on the payment for the works that he had done about 3 years ago. What this gentleman does, he flies into the country every 2 months to deposit a letter at the National Treasury indicating that the Kenya government is in default. And all he does, you see, because the contractual relationship between him and the government is very clear. And the penalties for default are also very clear. So all he does is he comes here to submit his invoice as well as a letter confirming that we are in default. And he gets a stamp from our officials, gets back into a plane and goes back to his jurisdiction. And for that matter, it becomes almost impossible because how many such cases are crystallizing against our country whereby we have very clear contractual relationship between these contractors who intend to take these matters to international court and sequester the assets of our government. And I said to him, why don't you try to pursue a negotiation to see if you can get paid? He said, I have no interest. I will just go to court and I will sequester an asset of Kenya overseas at some point. And he gave me an example. He said, one of our neighboring countries of which they have had a similar contractual relationship, he went there and delivered such a letter. He said he did not reach the airport before he was called back and told to resign his letter, and they gave him a payment plan. So, meaning that there was no crystallization of further debt and penalty. So, how many cases? I think it touches on patriotism, and it touches on an attitude of bureaucratic nonchalance and don't care attitude. And where does this derive from? I think it derives from an inherent problem that we have in this country of wastefulness. And if you want to understand, you see, the political class has always paid lip service to the issue of austerity. We talk austerity, but you go anywhere where there is a meeting of public servants and tell me if you see any semblance of austerity. Go and try and board an Emirates flight this afternoon and go to the business class and first class section. Tell me who you will find. Go to the 5-star hotels in this world and see who patronizes the most. And the reason for that, I think we have, and Mheshimiwa here can tell us, because they're the ones who, pass the public accounts. I mean, I think we've gone into a culture where we compensate our public servants too high. So it is actually to their benefit if they're out of station earning allowances. So we've developed that sort of an economy where people are not patriotic. They don't give a damn whether they stamp, letters that are indicating a clause where we are in default and we are going to, it is crystallizing somewhere. So with those sort of a scenario, that kind of a scenario, how, Dibal, will you determine what we owe? How do you know?
Yeah, it's very convoluted indeed. But is there any rhyme or reason that if we do not even, cannot be able to determine what we owe, should we be increasing that headroom for borrowing to almost 168 billion shillings? And yet we've been saying, we are paring down on our borrowing space.
No, for me, we must go easy in borrowing, whether domestically or externally. I don't think we should review upwards the ceiling. If anything, if it was to be reviewed, it should be downwards. Because there is very little value we have shown for the borrowing we've done, say for the past 3 or so years, if I may talk about that. My thinking also, Debal, in terms of transparency, I think one better way to manage the debt better would be the more transparent it can be, the better. I remember about 3 or 4 years ago, I think attending an ISPAC workshop down at the coast, and the discussion was on public debt. And 3 or 4 different sources of government were reporting different figures. I mean, if that be the case, I don't know if it has since changed. Maybe the exiting chief, Dr. Sirma would have clarified to us what's the accurate position of our debt register as of today. Which register do we use? So the BAL transparency is one way to manage it. But I'm also glad that government seems to have realized the folly of the government-to-government purchase of oil from the Middle East. I noticed that that's going to be eased in December. It would be nice to find out what its impact was. And sometimes it helps to be honest for government to admit that, you know, we tried this, it was in good faith. We thought it was going to help us, but it hasn't helped us. You know, sometimes you inspire confidence by being open and admitting when things haven't quite worked well. But above all else, whatever good policy government has, for them to succeed, government has to move along with the Kenyan people. One thing I liked about Rwanda when I worked there was this Vision 2020 at the time. It was on the lips of almost every Rwandese because government walked along with the people on it. Whatever good policies government may be coming with, I think where, in my view, government is not doing very well, we're not engaging the populace and getting their buy-in, even when we have good ideas for them. There must be public participation in the real sense, not just glossing over it, but it must be substantial.
But also just when you talk about the G2G, because we're talking about debt and also a huge chunk of money was going towards this. And with the meeting with the IMF last week on Wednesday, they estimated the state's contingent liabilities stemming from the letters of support issued to participants in the supply chain at 0.4% of GDP. And they said that in the latest country report, under the extended facility and the extended credit facility arrangements, this will be a huge loophole and exposure to the fuel import scheme at around $400 million, which means the government-to-government deal is not risk-free, as touted before. You know, we were told that this is tight, it's watertight, there will be no losses made, but now this, as they're flagging, is a contingent liability.
Yeah, surprising, I'm not really, I don't worry about that too much because most of the time the information we get is newspaper level information. You don't get access to the specific agreements that have been signed and so on. And in the newspaper type of announcements, you highlight what goes with the public policy flow, you know, with the political economy of things, you know, that we have this policy, we have these likely reactions, how do we navigate and so on. So we don't normally get into the actual. Same to debt. I think a classic example was the difficulty of getting the specifics agreed on the SGR, for example. To this day, it has not come out clearly, and you only end up an anecdote. Somebody says, you wouldn't get to know because it's all written in Chinese. But even if that was the case, we would get a Chinese certified interpreter. The UN is just in town here.
Or Google.
Google for the minute. Who have certified interpreters, and they would tell us, well, it's beyond that. It's more than that. It is attempting to have components of them that the bureaucratic elite feel that this should only stay among them. I think that we must get rid of. But still, I think and lastly, IMF does not volunteer to come to town. That's something we must remember.
Indeed.
It's different from the World Bank. The World Bank has this mandate of an anti-policy global mandate, and they can scout around countries, they can do analysis and assessments without being invited. And they present code analysis and country can say what to do. But IMF doesn't come to town unless you have invited them. And you invite IMF when certain conditions prevail, which are predictable, which are known quite well by the planners and the managers and so on, by the business sector. And if you get to such a level, we're inviting IMF. They are people who come in when you're critically ill, with a contagious disease, sometimes infectious, but not with non-communicable diseases, you know. That's really what brings them in town. These structural imbalances is what is their fodder, you know, is their daily food, so to say. And they have studied the arrangement, so to say. The details might differ where the pressure is put, but the fact that you should bring these things in balance, expenditure and income, at a country level is a standard. It's a standard thing. So Koto can make noises and say we don't want them in town, but we invite them, and we invite them when people like Koto are quiet at the time when they should be speaking and helping us get out of this. So I really think that Kenyans must learn to speak truthfully and honestly, and we should confront authority without bias. We should say what we think can work. We might also be wrong, but I think it's good that we put things on the table.
Indeed. Right, our music is up for the station break right now. It's 7 o'clock on the nose. When we circle back, we shall continue with our particular story. Also, the parastatals, the cash flow, where we are seeing the state firms are borrowing extra 34 billion shillings from banks and struggling economy. And free benefits on fringes. KRA is eyeing more collections on employer packs with a rate rise, or rising to 15%. And we shall also be looking at that as well. Also, the A&B, Airbnb, with the latest spate of killings that we've been observing, investors now, they will have to register business and present documents to Tourism Regulatory Authority. Also, that will be a cabinet issue that we'll put on the table as well. And since now we are transitioning to SHIF, a cloud of 16 billion shillings debt is haunting the National Health Insurance Fund before it is entirely disbanded ahead of a transition. What does it really portend, especially right now that we know this matter has been resolved and the deductions are looming? We had also the Ministry of Health being really under the gun to try and put proper structure so that those deductions and remittances